Hey, Ghoulash here, and welcome to another entry of...
The Ghoulog.
It's been a while since my last video, but I have actually been making videos this entire time. In the past year alone, I made 492 complete videos, but my creator, Dr. Wolfula, has rejected each and every one. I don't know why. I personally think that they were good ideas for videos, but everybody has different tastes. Well, you know what they say, 493rd time's the charm.
Third down the charm!
In this video, with its long-awaited sequel finally arriving, I'll be reviewing Beetlejuice, the classic paranormal family comedy film released in 1988 and directed by Tim Burton, the film that really established Tim Burton's dark, fantastical style as a filmmaker to the general public. But this wasn't Tim Burton's first film.
Just come up for a while, we'll talk inside. Come on!
Tim Burton got his start in the entertainment business at Disney in the early 80s, fresh from graduating from Cal Arts. And at Disney, Burton animated or storyboarded for films like Fox and the Hound or The Black Cauldron, but Burton's work supposedly never ended up in the final versions of these films. This was a troubled time for Disney's animation unit in the wake of Walt Disney's deserved death, and Disney Animation wouldn't receive wide acclaim again until the release of The Little Mermaid. So Disney animators during this tumultuous time when work was inconsistent would either go off to greener pastures or work on personal projects.
He's considerate and nice, but he wants to be just like Vincent Price.
During his stint at Disney, Burton created the stop-motion animated short Vincent, about a little boy who believes he's Vincent Price.
He likes to paint and read to pass some of the time.
A short that would foreshadow Burton's future stop-motion film projects like Nightmare Before Christmas, directed by Henry Selick with Burton as producer, and later Corpse Bride, directed by Mike Johnson and Burton.
Maggots.
Tim Burton would eventually collaborate with Vincent Price one more time on Edward Scissorhands, one of the last times anyone would get to collaborate with the screen and stage icon of horror.
As he quoted the Raven, nevermore.
Burton's work gained further attention with his next short, this time live action, Frankenweenie, which, despite the title, thankfully isn't pornographic in nature. The short is about a boy named Victor Frankenstein who brings his dog back from the dead. A family-friendly parody of the classic Universal Frankenstein films, but Disney ended up firing Burton for creating the short with Disney resources, deeming it too dark and scary to be appropriate as family entertainment. But ironically, years after Tim Burton made a name for himself as a filmmaker, Disney tabbed him to direct a stop-motion full-length remake of Frankenweenie.
First you want to kill me, now you want to kiss me.
Frankenweenie was the film that brought Tim Burton to the attention of the late great Paul Reubens, the underground comic best known as the classic character Pee Wee Herman, and for making very poor choices inside seedy movie theaters. Tim Burton became Paul Reubens' choice to direct the film adaptation of the Herman character, Pee-wee's Big Adventure, a story about a rebel and his bike. Personally, my favorite of Burton's films and one of the greatest road movies ever made. Endlessly delightful and rewatchable with countless iconic gags and lines.
I meant to do that.
With some of the most creative filmmaking ever seen. But Pee-wee's Big Adventure was ultimately Paul Reubens' baby.
We don't take kindly to strangers coming around here.
There are scenes that feel uniquely honed into Tim Burton's style, like Pee-wee's terrifying encounter with Large Marge. But it's Tim Burton's first full-length movie. It doesn't quite stand out in his filmography as a full-blown Burton movie, like his second film would, which, after the success of Pee-wee's Big Adventure, was originally intended to be a big-budget adaptation of Batman that was being developed by screenwriter Sam Hamm. But Warner Brothers was reluctant to greenlight a Batman film, so Burton had to find other work in the meantime, and that other work became Beetlejuice.
Hi, how are you?
Beetlejuice, the story of a recently deceased couple trying to rid their home of its new earthly inhabitants with the help of a seedy bio-exorcist, was originally conceived by screenwriters Larry Wilson and the late Michael McDowell, the latter of whom was an author mostly known for writing episodes of anthology TV programs. The original script for Beetlejuice was significantly darker, conceived as much more of a horror comedy with depictions of graphic violence and gore, and with the titular villain being far more demonic, sinister, and creepy.
You like it?
I'll go into some of the differences between the original script and the final product later, but suffice to say, Beetlejuice was a tough sell to film execs. Co-creator Larry Wilson was at one point called into the office of a film executive who read the early script for Beetlejuice, and the executive asked Wilson what he was doing with his life.
Is this what happens when you die?
It was an uphill battle to bring something strange and unusual like Beetlejuice to the big screen, but luckily Tim Burton himself was strange and unusual, and was interested in helming the project. And with rewrites by the late Warren Scarron, Beetlejuice's script was toned down for a more mainstream audience. Certain characters were reimagined, the Afterlife setting was expanded upon, and the ending was changed, but the final script essentially retained the spirit and same basic storyline of the original screenplay. Beetlejuice's weirdo premise still made it tough to draw in mainstream talent, though, and the film's budget allowed for very little money to be spent on the extensive effects necessary to realize the movie, though Burton would use this to his advantage. And even when the film was completed, Burton had difficulties keeping the original title Beetlejuice, a play on the real-life red supergiant star that the villain of the film shares his name with.
Call Betelgeuse.
Warner Brothers wanted to generically title the film House Ghosts, and Burton mockingly suggested naming the film Scared Sheetless, which Warner Brothers apparently liked even better, much to Burton's horror. Despite difficulties getting off the ground, Beetlejuice became a hit for Warner Brothers, the 10th highest grossing film of 1988.
I feel real good about myself, you know what I mean?
And helped secure the green light of Burton's Batman adaptation, which became an even bigger hit. But it was Beetlejuice that proved that Burton could take weird, dark material and turn it into something with mainstream appeal. And I'll break down the ways Burton managed to do this with my review of Beetlejuice. But first I have a message from my sponsor. Me! Pledge to the Dr. Wolfula Patreon today to support the Dr. Wolfula and Ghoulog channels. Help them continue to grow, and you'll also get access to weekly movie nights every Sunday, and archive commentaries if you miss the movie nights live. Just $5 a month to get a movie night every week. Pledge to patreon.com/drwolfula if you're interested in my bonus movie night live streams, and I thank you in advance.
It's showtime.
Beetlejuice tells the story of the Maitlands, a married couple. Barbara, played by Gina Davis, and Adam, played by Alec Baldwin. Back when he was just a ghost instead of turning other people into ghosts.
I'm gonna get started right away.
Hey, where you going?
The couple is perfectly content with their simple, stress-free life together in the small town of Winter River, Connecticut. Adam has even built a loving scale model recreation of his beloved town in the Maitlands attic. And the couple spent their entire vacation together at home in their cozy, American Gothic-looking hilltop house, turning down offers to sell their pad from their insistent relative Jane.
I was just telling Barbara about this offer on the house.
No, Jane.
Things go awry for the couple, though, when what was supposed to be a short trip to their hardware store becomes a permanent trip to the grave.
You look out for that.
Because the dog whose life they spared couldn't stay still for one moment. What a dick. Here's the first change from the original script to screen. The Maitlands' drowning deaths were supposed to actually be depicted, and Barbara's arm would have been crushed. The only remnant of this in the final film is Barbara mentioning her arm feeling frozen.
How's your arm?
I don't know if it's frozen.
How it's handled in the film is great. It's like they just didn't drown at all. They just casually go home like everything's fine. The movie doesn't beat you over the head that the Maitlands are now ghosts. There's no Casper taking a train to the underworld bullshit.
That fire wasn't burning when you left.
Selling the Maitlands as ghosts is initially handled subtly, with things like Barbara not being hurt by a flame, Barbara being suspended in the air while sleeping, or Adam leaving the house and ending up on Saturn's moon Titan, which is populated by stop-motion animated sandworms. You know, subtle! This is one of the most out there weird elements of Beetlejuice. The idea that ghosts are bound to haunt a single location, and if they leave it, the limbo they end up in as punishment is a Saturn moon inhabited by Tim Burton's take on Frank Herbert's Bread and Butter. It's the kind of thing L. Ron Hubbard would say happens to you after you die, and yeah. Tim Burton got around his small effects budget by making the effects in the film look cartoony, and intentionally low fidelity is a stylistic choice, evoking the effects of a cheesy B-movie, and it gives Beetlejuice a handmade indie charm when it really is a studio-backed film with stars and a multi-million-dollar budget. The only guidance that the Maitlands receive early on in their new afterlife is a manual dubbed the Handbook for the Recently Diseased. Deceased. But the book is very vague about adapting to an undead existence, and it's just confusingly written in general.
Functional perimeters vary from manifestation to manifestation.
And when the Deetz family, a bunch of New York yuppies, moves into the Maitland home, Adam and Barbara are at a loss for what to do.
And look at that kitchen. You're finally going to be able to cook a decent meal.
You have the patriarch, Charles Deetz, looking to finally get away from the city, played by Jeffrey Jones, who got into trouble for taking pictures of naked boys 9 times.
9 times?
9 times.
You have the not-disgraced Catherine O'Hara as Delia Deetz, Charles's new wife, a pretentious artiste who's frustrated with moving out into the sticks.
Careful, that's my sculpture. And I don't mean mine and I bought it, I mean I made it. It's my sculpture.
Angelica Houston was originally supposed to play Delia, but O'Hara is a better fit, entirely out of her element as somebody who desperately wants to be taken seriously as an artist, but she just doesn't have any real credibility or confidence in her abilities.
Don't you believe in my work?
It's less difficult to see the mom from Home Alone as an easily flustered imposter than Morticia.
Why are you doing this to me?
And O'Hara would go on to voice Sally in the Burton-produced Nightmare Before Christmas.
Oh, how I hope my premonition is wrong.
And of course, there's the youngest Deetz, Lydia, daughter of Charles, stepdaughter of Delia, a disenfranchised teenage goth photog played by Winona Ryder in just her 3rd ever role.
I could live here.
A lot of heavy hitters auditioned for the Lydia role, like Molly Ringwald, Juliette Lewis, and Jennifer Connelly, but Ryder won the role with her deadpan, unimpressed delivery with a hint of wide-eyed enthusiasm towards the weird.
God, you guys really are dead.
Lydia is sort of the proto-goth character, an inescapable influence on so many goth characters to come. I wouldn't be surprised if Christina Ricci's version of Wednesday in the Addams Family film just a few years later was directly inspired by Lydia Deetz, for instance, especially since Tim Burton was originally intended to direct that film.
You know, if I had seen a ghost at your age, I would have been scared out of my wits.
Winona Ryder is great in the role of Lydia, but she doesn't quite steal the show like she stole all those Cartier bags 20 years ago.
I myself am strange and unusual.
Delia Deetz intends to completely reinvent the Maitland house under the guidance of her right-hand man, Otho, an interior decorator even more pretentious than Delia.
You're lucky the yuppies are buying condos so you can afford what I'm going to have to do to this place.
Played by the late Glenn Shaddix, another future Nightmare Before Christmas alum.
I'm only an elected official here. I can't make decisions by myself.
And Otho's plans for the home are the final straw for the Maitlands, who try to scare the shit out of the Deetzes, really pushing the movie's PG rating to the limit, but the Deetzes can't see the Maitlands to be terrified of the ghostly couple's frightful antics.
Oh, honey, this is not working out at all.
Charles, I will not.
The Deetz parents are too lost in their own little worlds to see anything from a world beyond.
Oh, God.
Now, Lydia Deetz, she's a different story, and she fits in just fine with the Maitland ghosts.
You guys better get another routine because those sheets, they don't work.
Their fruitless efforts to haunt their own home force the Maitlands to seek otherworldly guidance, but they're gonna have to wait in line. Literally! The afterlife of Beetlejuice is depicted as bureaucracy taken to its most extreme, a sort of spooky version of Terry Gilliam's Brazil.
Dear ladies, you spend 125 years on Earth.
If you don't have anywhere to haunt, you're trapped in a waiting room limbo with millions of souls ahead of you in line.
Number 54,601,000.
The afterlife is a colorfully slanted, German expressionistic world populated by bizarre-looking undead characters, but it's still a stodgy bureaucracy all the same.
You probably haven't even read through the manual completely yet.
Art director Bo Welch's design on Beetlejuice really tapped into Tim Burton's offbeat visual sensibilities. The afterlife is an ethereal place, but it isn't dark and gloomy. There's ironically a glimmer of liveliness to the setting's vivid use of color that contrasts the blander, monochromatic setting of what ultimately becomes the Deetz residence.
But these people...
Beetlejuice won an Academy Award for makeup, and when you look at the waiting room scene by itself, it's easy to see why. Each undead character has a story to tell with their makeup design that makes the viewer imagine the circumstances of their deaths, and the movie manages to make the act of dying something visually funny. A smoker burnt to a crisp, a hunter with a shrunken head, and even Miss Argentina here. The pageant contestant turned receptionist seems like she could be an alien or something. It isn't immediately clear what the deal is with her until it turns out she just slit her wrists.
If I knew then what I know now, I would have had my little accident.
Even the death of Juno, the Maitlands' Afterlife caseworker, was evidently horrible or violent based on the slit in her throat emanating smoke from her cigarette. Death is just the ultimate gag in Beetlejuice, and the ghost that you leave behind is the punchline. And the Maitlands are lucky that they just drown so they don't have to come back from the dead as fucking freaks. Though the Maitlands do transform themselves into a fucked up version of Spy vs. Spy. Probably the scariest part of this movie, nightmare fuel. Alec Baldwin can just do that to his face. He's a monster.
You look great.
Before we move on, I gotta also talk about the music of Beetlejuice. Composed by Danny Elfman in his second collaboration with Tim Burton after Pee-wee's Big Adventure. Burton was a fan of Elfman's band Oingo Boingo's oddball music and requested that Elfman do the score for Pee-wee, and Elfman has scored all but 3 of Burton's movies since. It's a collaboration on the level of Spielberg and John Williams. It's hard to imagine a Tim Burton movie at this point without an Elfman score. And the score for Beetlejuice, specifically the opening theme, is quite possibly the ultimate Tim Burton score, because it sounds a little bit like every Burton movie score. You can hear some of the playfulness of Pee-wee. You can hear some of Batman's menacing qualities. The dreamier sound of Edward Scissorhands. Tim Burton movies often feel like a dark carnival, and Elfman's music definitely suits that aesthetic. Danny Elfman's music is great, just, be careful around him, ladies.
I love little girls, they make me feel so good.
Just to be safe. Just as notable to the film soundtrack, though, was its use of Harry Belafonte Calypso songs, which Adam listened to while working on his model town.
Together to find out which one is smarter.
And the music is put to great use when the Maitlands possess the Deetzes and their guest Dick Cavett during a dinner party. The party forced to sing and dance to Banana Boat against their will.
6 foot, 7 foot, 8 foot bunch.
But you don't hear anyone complaining.
It's like being in an amusement park.
It shows a playful side to the undead, where even when we're trying to scare you, it's still a fun time. Which doesn't really help the Maitlands with scaring off their home's current tenants.
Please, they're dead. It's a little late to be neurotic.
The Maitlands are ghosts desperate to find an easy solution to their big problem. And when you're desperate, you're willing to look to anyone for help, especially somebody looking to exploit your desperation.
Cute couple. Look nice and stupid, too.
Somebody like, well, Beetlejuice, played by Michael Keaton. Beetlejuice's name spelled like the name of the star within the context of the film. Yeah, I'm just now talking about Beetlejuice in a review of the movie Beetlejuice. Beetlejuice has very little screen time in his own film. Just 17 minutes out of a 90-minute movie. Beetlejuice appears so rarely I forget he exists. Then when Beetlejuice does appear, I say, there's a Beetlejuice in this movie? That's my gag! The hell was that about? But yeah, Beetlejuice the film has a lot of characters and world building, and not a lot of room for its title villain until the final act, really. But the scarcity of Beetlejuice does add to his mystique, and makes his few scenes particularly special. Beetlejuice the character was very different in the original script. He was supposed to be a winged demon who takes the form of a Middle Eastern guy. He was going to be even more violent, sexually aggressive, and have more sinister ambitions, and the top choice for the role was Sammy Davis Jr. Very different concept for Beetlejuice. Tim Burton opted to instead make the Ghost with the Most a little more harmless as a sleazy, grimy, undead sex pest con artist who worked for Juno until Beetlejuice decided to strike out on his own, conning the recently deceased like the Maitlands.
Claimed he could get rid of the living.
got into more trouble.
Visually, Beetlejuice is kind of a caricature of Tim Burton himself. Sunken eyes, messy hair, kind of a moldy orange version of Tim Burton. But the performance is all Michael Keaton as this fast-talking car salesman type who literally tries to sell his bio-exorcism business like a car salesman would.
Hey, Jack, now, you get a free demon possession with every exorcism. You can't beat that, can you?
Keaton's performance feels very loose and improvisational, very influenced by the late Robin Williams' shtick of drifting into vocal impressions.
You gotta work with me here. I'm just trying to cut a deal. What do you want me to do?
References.
Attention, Kmart shoppers.
Or weird tangents.
Don't you hate it when that happens? Let's go, Barbara.
Like the genie in Aladdin.
Offer void, we're prohibited by law.
But Beetlejuice obviously has a darker side, a much more deviant, lecherous, whoremongering side that sets Keaton's performance apart.
Yeah.
Hey!
Excuse me? What?
The manic performance of Keaton is like a live-action cartoon character, which made Beetlejuice well-suited for a Saturday morning spin-off.
Nice f***ing model!
Beetlejuice also feels like an anticipation of the zany performances of Jim Carrey years down the line.
You like it?
Needless to say, Beetlejuice, especially in his striped suit in the final act, is an icon. One of the most memorable characters of the 1980s and Michael Keaton's signature role that helped him secure the title role in Burton's Batman the following year. Keaton wanted to get nuts, and he got nuts.
Come on! Let's get nuts.
Ultimately, Beetlejuice is the villain of the film, with devious intentions, especially regarding Lydia Deetz.
We come for your daughter, Chuck.
But he's powerless unless his name is said 3 times, like Bloody Mary, Candyman, or Woody Allen. But Beetlejuice's services aren't truly needed until the finale, when the Deetz parents and Otho try to impress Robert Goulet by holding a seance that unintentionally leads to the Maitlands being exorcised. Death for the dead.
That's death for the dead.
Forcing Lydia to call on the ghost with the most for help.
Beetlejuice, Beetlejuice, Beetlejuice.
Which involves Beetlejuice just straight up f***ing killing Robert Goulet and his wife for some reason. I guess that was for singing the national anthem wrong.
That is why I won't do 2 shows a night anymore, babe.
These shenanigans ultimately lead to Beetlejuice forcing Lydia, an underage girl, to marry him so he can be free to cause mischief in the world of the living.
Yes, I love that man of mine.
In the original screenplay, Beetlejuice wasn't going to marry Lydia. He wanted to, have sex with Lydia. Not exactly family-friendly entertainment. Definitely for the best that they changed this. Beetlejuice is still a sex pest, but at least he isn't a total rapist. But if you've ever wanted to see Michael Keaton almost marry an underage Winona Ryder, this film has got you covered. You fucking weirdo.
Come on!
The finale of Beetlejuice does feel like they pulled it out of their ass, admittedly. The Maitlands try to rescue Lydia by saying Beetlejuice's name 3 times to send him back, but it doesn't work out. What does somehow work is Barbara returning from Saturn with a sandworm that eats Beetlejuice. I guess Barbara might be the Muad'Dib. She can ride sandworms and bend time and space. Alright, I'll accept it. Beetlejuice's epilogue reveals the Maitland and Deetz families now live in harmony in the same household, and the film's denouement seems like it also invented the idea of ending a movie with a big song and dance number, when you don't know how else to end it in a satisfying way. An idea you see later family films run with.
Rock your body, child!
You end the movie with a fun song like Jumpin' the Line, and the audience ends on a high note feeling like they had fun. And at least with Beetlejuice, they did.
Hey, this might be a good look for me.
The original Beetlejuice is a classic, the film that really put Tim Burton on the map, established his style as a filmmaker and an auteur hitmaker who could take weird, creepy, offbeat material and make it accessible and fun to the masses. The film is a visual feast, its soundtrack is incredible, Michael Keaton's performance is really funny, but he doesn't overshadow the endearing core narrative of the Maitland ghosts and their growing connection with the young girl who's moved into their house. The final act is a bit of a weak link, it feels rushed to its conclusion, but ultimately Beetlejuice is a highlight of Tim Burton's career and the film that will always define it. I give Beetlejuice 5 sandworms out of 5. In an upcoming video, I'll be reviewing Beetlejuice's animated series, so get subscribed so you don't miss out on it, and click the bell, please!
Well, I'm back. I feel real good about myself, you know what I mean?
This video is made possible through the pledges of Dr. Wolfula's Patreon supporters, and I'd like to give a very special thanks to the kind folks pledged to Doc's Shoutout tier. All the support on Patreon means a lot to me, and it helps my master's dark influence continue to grow. If you liked this video, like it, and if you loved it, click the subscribe and bell buttons for more videos. Be sure to also keep in touch by following me on social media at Instagram and Twitter at the Ghoulog. While I still have your attention, consider pledging to my master Dr. Wolfula's Patreon to support the channel and get bonus content like previews, VIP Discord server access, private movie night streams, and credits in videos. Consider pledging at patreon.com/Dr. Wolfula. Also, check out official Ghoulash t-shirts and other merch on tpublic.com/user/Dr. Wolfula. Thanks for watching, see you all next time. You f***ing weirdos.